My background's okay today. It seemed
Yeah,
okay.
you are good. How are we doing, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Expert Witness. Yeah, that's right. With Doug Miner and Stephen Palmieri. I am coming fresh back from California Republic, which is definitely a little bit different than the Texas Republic where I live. Doug and I were talking about things that have to do with this. Doug, how are you doing, sir? By the way, we could digress, but how are
Yeah,
you doing, sir? You coming from sunny California?
yeah. Fantastic day in the neighborhood today, for sure.
All right. So we bring this for you guys. Feel free to, chat below, comment. That's why we're here. We're here to answer for you. And, Doug Miner, for those of you guys who don't necessarily know him, he started off as a credit repair. Well, you started off as a mortgage guy, then became a credit repair guy. Then one day an attorney hired him and said, "Hey, can you give me an opinion on this?" And he wrote it. And then he got a check from the attorney and he realized, oh my goodness, I just became an expert witness. And so Doug Miner is a credit repair guy turned expert witness. And why do you guys want to watch this? Well, because in order to be able to be an expert, you got to think through the facts, think how things are going. And for credit repair, being able to think like an expert is definitely beneficial when you have those tough trade lines, those tough items, when you need to do more than just the not mine never late. Figure out how can you strategize and know what you're looking at. So Doug, we were talking right before the show. You've got kind of a lot of things going on, and how do you know your opponent, because they're going to have an expert. Kind of go ahead and just kind of jump in. What's on your mind, and what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah. We can riff on that a bit. I think it's like we were talking about. You in this line of work as a credit expert, there's not as many players out there that, let's say, other experts in different fields where there's doctors and lawyers and attorneys or CPAs or whatever. But in our field in credit, the number of people doing the expert witness work is fairly small. I mean, I don't know exactly how many there are. Is there 10 in the country? I'm not sure. Uh, but you do see normal. There's a few names that come up on a regular basis. Obviously everyone pretty much knows John Olsheimer, but there's others like Evan Hendricks, and there's a few others, and there have been a few that were around but have now passed away. So, but the point we were talking about was knowing
That's
your.
one way to that's one way to gain a monopoly in the marketplace. Just bump off your competition. A little Doug Miner mafia style strategy, huh? I like the way you think, man.
Uh,
So that's
no,
indeed.
well, hey, I guess the guys that have been around before John and I, they were a little long in the tooth from what I understand. Well, from meeting them as well. So,
Yeah.
uh, but knowing them, and also being on opposing sides of them, and then also this is something I didn't even tell you, Stephen. I There have been cases where um, opposing experts in my field where we've actually worked on cases together and tackled different aspects of the credit pieces of the case. Like John Olsheimer and I did a case last year in San Francisco where he did he did his side was sort of the credit reporting and the impact, the how it was reported and so forth, where my side was more the damages, the financial side of it, and the dollars and cents side of it. There was another expert in our field. His name's Thomas Tarter, and it had to do with a banking institution. And so they ended up having Thomas, do more of the internal banking operations piece of the case, and I did the credit piece of the case.
Did you say Thomas Tarter?
Yeah, Tarter.
Was his tagline, "I'm gonna make tartar sauce out of my opponent"?
I, I don't know if that's on his website, but maybe you can get some sort of royalty if you give him a good name
I
like
tell you, huh?
that.
All right. Anyway, so back to Tartar. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
digress here.
Well, so I don't. I guess some of the points that I'm trying to make is, one, it's good to know who the other experts are because then you have a better idea of how they may approach the case. Two, it's look, we're all doing our jobs and we do it the best that we can, and there's no reason to feel adversarial towards another expert that's in your same field because you both are going to come to it, or him, her, whoever, you're going to come to that situation with your own background and your own knowledge, and so your opinion may differ, right? John and I differ in opinions about cases all the time, um, but I think it's just my viewpoint and my background, right? So, but it didn't have me shy away from doing a case with him, right? So we can be on opposing sides. We can work on the same side. But as we were just talking, I had a new case call yesterday, and without naming names, I knew I'd had enough cases involving the same defendant with a different plaintiff. And so I know in my mind who the expert that they're going to use is, and I know how that person communicates the information. And I was able to communicate that to the attorney. And then the attorney decided to hire me because of that, because I can help him with questioning. I can give him, let's say, previous transcripts. So hanging on to, when you do this type of work, hanging on to deposition transcripts and trials transcripts of yourself and of opposing experts is really helpful, I think, for looking back and also helping you gain new cases and gaining the trust and helping other attorneys in different cases that you work on.
Yeah, see, I got my illegitimate law degree by watching Boston Legal,
Oh,
with William Shatner, Denny Crane.
Denny.
But the really high, powerful corporations in these litigations, like they would actually have like videos of like who were going to be like the experts and all the people testifying, and even the other lawyers, and they were like, okay, this is their MO. This is what they're known for right here. This is how you're gonna be able to slip them up. This is what they're gonna say. Like they would watch videos of like their prior recorded cases and testimony. So that's kind of what you're saying is, you wanna kind of know, study them and kind of know what's going to go on. At least try to get an idea so you can get a leg up.
Yeah, I think it's just a byproduct of doing the work, right? You end up in these situations, and you just over time just understand what the opposing side's sort of position is, and what they're looking for. And keep in mind, every case has its nuances, and they're all different. No two cases are exactly the same, and that's okay, right? But like, it's funny. One of the things you're talking about, this Boston Legal. I watched that. I think tonight, Bull. You ever watch the show Bull?
No, 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 I haven't seen that one.
All right. Well, he's a trial scientist, and I've worked on a case where they used a trial scientist where we actually, during the break, we're in one of these rooms and they're talking about, okay, hey, juror number 4, like she's doing this, and she was or juror number 7 is totally out of it, doesn't even know what's going on, or like, okay, Doug, when you speak, like, will you look at juror number 2 when we ask
Juror,
you?
juror number 7, that person came in smelling like marijuana.
Well,
What's going on there? What are they doing? Are they giving full attention?
I don't know. I know your impression of Southern California now is always permanently skewed, it seems like.
I was talking about New York. My goodness
Oh,
gracious. So, all right, let's get back focus here. But what you're saying, so you're talking about, jury scientists, court scientists. So people study this thing, right? So but let's kind of dial it back here. Like, so for people who are watching, right, we've got CROs and stuff. I mean, how can this help them, right? Actually, I had a call with a lady. I think she's watching Shar Helton. She's got a pretty cool little business. She started with Cindy Lease, and they actually kind of putting this like case broker business together where they got all these lawyers that will actually bid for leads of CRO files and stuff, which is kind of cool, like a lead broker thing. And it's kind of neat. You're kind of bridging the gap between attorneys and CROs. But she was like, man, these people, but a lot of them, they don't really know how to put the files together, right? Like just the letters aren't really like good factually, rooted and stuff. And so I think that ties hand in hand with kind of what you're talking about, I mean, to an extent, because, it all starts from the CRO perspective. If you're going to have a case that you want to hand off to an attorney, and if it's going to end up having somebody like you as an expert get called in, I mean, you can't really be sending out not mine, never late letters, right? Now, I mean, obviously you don't deal with just, credit reporting per se issue. You deal with a lot of damages and things that the furnishers and the creditors cause. But as it relates to our audience and the CROs that are out here, being able to construct a really good framework, a good foundation, I mean, that's paramount to anything that could ever escalate to pre-litigation, to litigation, and to where an attorney would want to get you involved. Would you agree?
yeah, I think it's and I'm just, as you were talking, I'm thinking back to a show that you did with John Watts, right? And from what I recall from the show, John was talking about different disputes and how you're pre-lit and everybody goes about it, right? That could be on this call. and being, giving them the evidence, giving them the opportunity to correct the information. I mean, that's the main thing, right? It's, you want to show that you've gone about it in a professional manner, that you've documented the issue that's at hand, and documented why something should be deleted or changed or altered in some way, right? And then if they're choosing to ignore it or not do a proper investigation, and just building the framework so that an attorney would want to take the case, and so that hopefully your client, being the person who wants credit repair, ends up with their desired outcome. Like, that's the thing. And here, this I'm all about desired outcomes, right? It's a matter of, and when I say desired outcomes, I mean, like, does this person want their credit repaired? Do they want this item completely removed? Like, and you, as a CRO, you can talk to them about that, right? And have some a semblance of, hey, if this trade line is completely deleted, you had 10-15 years of perfect credit with this creditor. Do you really want that trade line deleted, or do you really just want
Yeah.
the corrected or suppressed so that it's not affecting the score? What's the objective, what's the desired outcome? And I think in credit repair, the desired outcome most of the time has to do with, hey, I want to get my score up so I can buy the house, so I can get a new car, so that I don't pay such high interest rates on the car loan. So that, keeping all of that in mind, there's time frames associated with their desired outcomes. But more importantly, to set up the case to go on to the attorneys, and Shar would be great to have on, right, as far as talking about how they're transitioning these people over. But all I can say is go
You should
back to
get
that.
on as a guest on the next one. Let's
Yeah,
do it. Eh? Let's have us some more guests.
yeah. I would
So
tell the listeners to go back and watch. I don't know if it was the second or third show with John Watts, but yeah, he went into depth on that particular issue.
yeah, and so and just to kind of lay out the framework, right, of how things flow here for our listeners. If it becomes a case, you're gonna have to find an attorney who wants the case, and so once you have an attorney that takes on the case, that's where somebody like you, Doug, an expert witness, gets retained so that you can help justify the attorney's position, right? But in order to justify their position, they have to have a position, and in order for the attorneys to have a position, there has to be some sort of a fact pattern that they feel good about. And that's what it comes back down to, the job that the CRO does. Are you just sending out a bunch of, kind of vague, please verify? I mean, not anything necessarily wrong with that if you want to do a round with that, because the EOSCR, they're going to have a code for, like, vague dispute, and they'll reinvestigate it. But you're not going to want to send something to an attorney if you were just like, prove it or remove it, and it came back verified. Like, if that literally was your dispute, I mean, there's really no cause of action there, right? But on the flip side, if you're like, well, this data is wrong, it's missing data is required based on your industry standard, or we sent you something from Amex showing it has a zero balance, you didn't update it, it's still showing a 5,000 balance. Those are vastly different fact patterns than just kind of broad and vague disputes. So when you get pulled into the picture here, you're kind of like the backup artillery that the attorney is calling in, because the other side, they're going to have their experts that are going to justify their position, and you're being called in to justify the position of the attorney that's representing whoever the client is. So when you get called in for a case, I mean, they only give you like what they need. The attorney only gives you just enough information for you to do whatever the task is at hand, right? Like, they're going to be like, Doug, we've got this case, we're representing so and so, and here's why we're suing XYZ creditor or credit bureau, and here's some of the stuff, some of the dispute letters, or sometimes it's not even credit dispute stuff that you're on. It's mortgage issues, loan issues, but they'll just give you just enough for you to do your job and to look at it and formulate an opinion. They don't really reveal the whole case to you, right?
Well, okay, so a couple things, right? As far as when you're retained, you have to keep in mind, you have to have this sort of neutral positioning, right? But I do describe sort of my positions in the past or in similar type cases so that they have some idea of what my position would be and would it be helpful to their case or not, right? And I've had situations talking to attorneys where I'll say, look, like I can be really helpful on this part of your case, but I think if this particular issue were to come up, or if someone were to ask me about it, I think it could be hurtful for your case to have me there, right? I'm not desperate to take on every case. First and foremost. Secondly, I don't want someone to you hear this you know expert for hire where you're just going to say whatever they want you to say. Well, you're not going to have a career if that's what you do.
So the real problem is they just didn't offer you enough money, Doug. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Yeah.
They couldn't hire the expert based on those particular terms. Okay, again, I've got to give the disclaimer in case somebody tries to pull this video out and impeach your credibility. This is entirely for entertainment purposes only. Nothing that Doug or I say is actually related to reality. So, all right, Doug, let's get focused back here. Our audience wants serious information. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So look, then as far as there, I go about it in my way is I have sort of a questionnaire and a checklist of information, and I'll send that to the attorneys and say, hey, look, this is the general type of information that I'm going to look for. This is the kind of questions, if there's somebody I need some answers from, if it's a plaintiff, where the damages occurred, what time frame, do they have any documentation, things of that nature. And then to your point, I've experienced lots of different things depending when you talk about documentation to look over. Like I've had it where they've given me a certain amount of documentation, and after sort of starting to draft the report, I'll say, hey, like if something like this were available, or if you had this type of information, and they're like, oh yeah, we have that. And it's like, what? Like, yeah, give that to me. It's super helpful to your case, right? But then I've had the reverse where, it's hey, how many documents I'll ask the attorney, how many documents are we talking about? 200 pages or 500 pages? And, they tell you 250 pages, and then what shows up at your office is, 1,500 pages. And you're like, what's going on here? What happened? Right?
That's why they're attorneys, because they're not really good with math. Otherwise, they would be engineers, right? So
the point being is you never know exactly. Like, yes, sometimes is information left out. I would say absolutely at times it happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't. Are there times where they maybe give you too much? Absolutely, that happens as well, right? So, but then in those cases where you're given too much, you have to sort of I try to be judicious with my time and get to the documents that are going to be pertinent to what I'm doing, right? So that's something that you can try to clean up in the earlier parts of if you're retained. And like I use the questionnaire, the checklist of information, things of that nature, to kind of edit down what I want to look at first. And then if there's more information that I believe will be helpful, okay, let's schedule a call with the plaintiff, or let's schedule a call with the attorney. Do you have these types of documents and email, something along those lines to help sort of solidify my opinions and support the case at the same time. There's more.
That's when you go in after hours and you see like the paralegal in Photoshop, like copying and chopping up and creating. Again, we're just joking here, guys. We are absolutely joking. We're not talking about manufacturing any sort of evidence. This is like George Clooney. He only plays a doctor on TV. He's not a real one. So, all right, Doug, let's get focused here again, man. So, you got to have good documents, good, real, legitimate documents. You've got to be able to prove what it is. I mean, the attorney can't come to you with a really thin, weak case and be like, I mean, I guess they can, but Doug, please try to, you're my saving grace. Let's talk about that. Like, you're my saving grace, Doug. I've got a case. I know my client has been wronged, but I just can't necessarily get there with the facts that I can prove, but I want you to try to help. Like, does that kind of stuff happen sometimes where you play a stronger role than maybe on some other cases?
Oh yeah, I think because that's a really cool point to bring up, in that some of the attorneys that, let's say, I deal with this may be the first case that they're ever doing that has credit in it, is a component of damages or as part of their case, right? And you really spend a lot of time trying to educate them, and then the documentation associated with it. They may think that they don't have documentation that is supportive, but you can say, okay, hey, you may want to subpoena the ACDV forms from the exchange, right?
Yeah.
Or hey, that mortgage loan that they applied for in 2019, get me a copy of the application along with the credit report. Get in touch with the broker or the bank, whoever ran the credit report. Let's get a copy of that, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of help educate them on the type of documentation that will help with the case or help meaning me, do my job to better explain what's going on and support the opinions. So yeah, that definitely comes up. It's a part, like the CROs are going to be in a position where, again, they're in credit. The attorneys aren't dealing with credit every day, and I would say the majority of attorneys, well, I can't say majority. I don't know the actual facts on it, but there's a good number that I'm involved with where there's an educational process that's going on,
Yeah.
and part of it can be like, hey, I need you to be able to explain this so that the judge will understand it or a jury will understand it, right? And I think we've talked on previous shows about, we use a lot of acronyms and shortcuts in the way we communicate about this stuff, but there is that component. Luckily, I think the CROs, they have a real advantage in the sense of they deal with consumers on a daily basis with these credit issues. And so they're typically going to have to make it so it's understandable so that their clients, they can best help them and help them understand what they're doing for them. So,
Yeah. I mean, for what our audience, the CROs are going to see most. I mean, we're really just dealing with credit repair, and the most obvious thing is to just learn how to read a credit report. And as simple as that seems, there's a lot of confusing information. That's where I always talk about Metro 2, which is the industry standard format. Like there's actually a manual that shows you how the data fields are supposed to report. And if you look at the reports, there's missing information, there's inaccurate information. I mean, you reduce it down to the simplest form, which is, finding errors. And obviously, I mean, the goal really is to be able to just get enough leverage to get a deletion, right? That's really all we really want as credit repair companies. But I mean, to be able to work it in such a way where if for whatever reason you've got that tough one, you've at least not wasted 4 rounds, on just kind of crazy things that you don't have any sort of a factual basis for. And if you are kind of building round after round that builds up on the prior one and there's a factual basis, you may be surprised that you're actually able to, especially if you dispute with the furnishers, compel a deletion from those guys. I mean, if you actually are telling them something that makes sense, and it's not going to happen every time, but if you've built up a good case file like that, there's no reason why your deletion ratio shouldn't go up. And if not, hey, you've got a good file to hand over to the CFPB, and if not, hand over to an attorney ultimately to just take a look and view the facts.
yeah, think about so what pops in my head, Stephen, is where, let's say you go through these disputes that you've done, you use sort of John Watts's sort of framework for it, you give them all the documentation, you support, the reasoning behind why it should be deleted and so on and so forth. And let's say it does get to the attorney. Well, I've seen on many occasions where the lawsuit is filed and then whoever the furnisher is then just decides to delete their trade line.
Too late.
Right. You're right. So two parts to that, right? One is the damage was already done if it was inaccurate, let's say. And then two, to the CRO side of it, well, who's to say now that the information's been deleted, is your client happy or not? I don't know. Was that part of the desired outcome? I hope so, if that's what's happened, right? Yeah. But I've seen that happen many times where the furnisher just deletes the entire trade line, and then it sort of, I'm going to say, in a manner of speaking, sort of holds their hand up and says, "Hey, look, no harm, no foul. There's nothing. We're not damaging anybody's credit.
It's gone. I mean, it should have gone 6 months ago, but it's gone.
Yeah.
No problem, right? What's the problem, guys? Can we just all move along our separate way?" And the attorney's like, "No, you're gonna have to write a check now in addition to that deletion. Thank you." So, well, man, I know you've got a bounce here. We're gonna do a little bit of an early leaving of this show. We've got probably just about 5 minutes left. Again, if anybody's watching, you've got questions for John. He is a world-renowned, which, by the way, Doug Miner, world-renowned credit expert witness. You could be the first credit expert on Mars. You can go ahead and talk to Elon Musk. I think he's got this he's got that starship he's getting ready to shoot up over there, man. You could definitely get in the history books, man. When he colonized it, you could be like the Mars credit repair expert witness. So don't know even where the hell that came from. We're just talking craziness. So let's dial this thing in. Let's kind of get back here. If we've got questions, put them in below. But as we wrap this up, what are some of the major, maybe some high point takeaways you would recommend for our audience here? CROs, certain things that they can really just look out for, pay attention to help them, really help them to help themselves, honestly. Because if you're doing good dispute letters with some sort of a factual basis, you're really helping yourself. You're helping your own job to become easier because you've got something intelligent and legitimate to send out there as a dispute. And what are maybe some high level takeaways you would leave our audience with today? Some things to think about.
Yeah, I would say a couple things sort of pop in my mind. One is, maybe you go back and audit some files that you'd worked on in the past, and maybe look at the way you did your disputes. Second part is, look, I think it's a whole new avenue to find attorneys that you can hand these people off to, right? Or maybe you go back and audit your files and you find a handful of files that you want to refer out to an attorney who'd be willing to take them on. So yeah, I mean, from a marketing standpoint and then helping your client standpoint, I think the undercurrent here is like, do your job to the best of your ability. Do it, like you're saying, with a fact pattern, back it up, give them documentation. And then either you're going to succeed in getting the information removed in a normal dispute process, or you've set the groundwork for a solid case for an attorney would most likely, or better chances an attorney's going to want to take it on and help your client out, right? It's like, as the CRO, you can only do so much. And then if the handoff has to happen, and that may become part of, your intake or your selling strategy up front. Like, hey, look, we just don't leave you hanging if it doesn't work.
Strategy, dude. Man, you got bad credit. I want to work with you, man. Whether you're qualified or not, that's my selling strategy. You got a 450 credit score. Nope. Like those car dealers, no job, no credit, no problem. You know what I mean? You got bad credit. Hey, you come on over here, man. We're gonna work with you.
Well, it also goes like, I think we talked about on one of the previous shows about certain marketing things, and the way I went about my CRO stuff was through a property management firm and a real estate office, and I was getting 50 leads a month out of that. It was awesome. So, if anybody wants to kind of know more about that, the best way to get in touch with me, you can see my name on the screen. It's Doug@DougMiner.com, or just go on my website, DougMiner.com. And yeah, I'm happy to share this kind of stuff with everybody. And I wish everybody the best with their disputes.
Well, although your last name is Minor, it's really Major. You're Doug Major, man. You're the big leagues. But in all sincerity, so Doug loves to talk with people. I feel like there's a lot of amazing things to come down the pipeline here, for us to help the industry as things evolve. But you can go to DougMiner.com and you can reach out to Doug if you want to talk to him. He will let you buy him coffee. I know that for a fact. And of course, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to message me. We have an amazing training course available, creditrepairtrainingcourse.com. And of course, we have the most amazing software in the entire world that will let you generate beautiful factual letters, disputing Metro 2, Palmieri systemdemo.com for a quick little video there. That being said, we've got actually real quick, my goodness, Shar, you just popped up at the nick of time. Okay, so Shar says, by the way, Shar, congratulations on your recent nuptials. She got married last week or 2 weeks ago. She's now got one of those Facebook hyphenated names. You know what I mean? That means you're either a Latina or you're remarried. So, because, it's like, that's how it goes in this world. Like in the Facebook world, you kind of hyphenate your name when you get remarried and stuff. So she says, thanks. Okay. All right, let's go back here. So she said, we have hired someone to go over all our files for the last 2 years so we can go searching for violations. Shar by the way, Doug, you kind of look like a gremlin there. I'm like, this thing is cutting off your face. There we go. All right. So Shar, at Doug Miner's request, we're going to get you in on one of these future shows. Actually, we'll do like a 3-way here. Because and for those of you guys who don't know Shar, feel free to message her. She's got a cool little lead broker business taking CRO client leads and brokering those to attorneys is actually totally legitimate and legal and pretty awesome and amazing. So reach out to her on that. But yeah, that's cool, Shar. And so you say, thanks. Yes, congratulations. So that being said, we will go ahead and wrap this one up a little bit early. Doug's got to go out there to the Santa Barbara coast. He's got his surfboard he's going to be bringing out there. He's going to have some cool stuff to do. And Doug, man, I love you, man. I'm jealous, man. I'm over here in this hot little desert, Texas, and you're over there along the nice, windy Pacific Ocean. So that being said, we will see all of you guys back here on the next episode. You guys take care.
Right on. Thanks. Take care.